Hello, I'm Lisa Van Dusen and welcome to First Person. Today I'm talking with Angela Buenning Filo, who's a photographer and the creator of this project that we're sitting in the midst of, the Palo Alto Forest. And it's part of the reopening exhibition suite here at the Palo Alto Art Center called Community Creates. So welcome, Angela.
Thank you, Lisa.
And I'm really excited to be here as an enthusiast of the Art Center and as somebody who's watched this project develop over the last few months, watching it a little bit on the website. Can you just explain briefly what this project is, what the genesis was, and what it is?
Yeah, so Karen, the director here at the Art Center, came to me and asked me to consider participating in this project. And it just really had a very brilliant premise, which is artwork created with the community, so in collaboration with the community. And it was very open-ended besides that. So started to toss around different ideas of what that might look like. And in my past photography, I've focused a lot on the Silicon Valley landscape, photographing, starting in 2000, the boom and the bust, and looking at kind of the built landscape in this area. And as part of that project, I had done a real intense focus on one of the last orchards in Silicon Valley and photographed each of the 1,737 trees in that orchard and got really interested in making portraits of trees as sort of a way to think about the landscape and about our relationship with it. So that was kind of all in the back of my mind and where my work had been in the past. And so one of the ideas that came forward when Karen brought up this concept of making an artwork with the community was to do something that extended or added on to my past project on the orchard. And I started to think about how integral trees are to Palo Alto, how much Palo Alto cares about its urban forest, and wanted to think about photography, since that's my medium, and how we could look at having people stop to think about and document a tree in Palo Alto that was important to them. So as we continued to develop the idea, Karen, in conversation with myself, and Canopy became a partner of the project very early on, and Catherine was a great source of brainstorming as well. And so Catherine Martineau of Canopy, the director of Canopy. And so we just started to think about how we would engage people, and in my mind, it was never really going to be about, many people thought it was a photography contest, as it turns out, but it really wasn't about making a great photograph of a tree. The genesis of it was really much more stopping to take a moment to reflect on a tree, more the act of documenting a tree. I wanted people of all ages to get involved in doing it, and we did have kids. We've had kids as young as 3 years old, and you know, throughout the generations participate in the project. So. And then as the idea developed, this concept that we would ask people to write a 6-word story about the tree. And I think those 6-word stories in the end really make the images sing, because it gives us insight into why an individual chose a particular tree. So at one point in the project, I thought maybe I'll just have people identify the trees and I'll go photograph them. And it was really, the turning point was really when I thought, no, I really want people to make the images themselves. Just use a cell phone camera, use whatever you have on hand, and just have it be about the act of pausing, reflecting, documenting, and thinking about a tree.
What happened technically, and what sort of the physical process that happened?
Yeah, so the ideas really began flowing way back in January, at the beginning of this year, and then it took us probably until April to really refine things and build a website that would make it very simple and very easy for people to just email in a photo and a 6-word story. And I wanted, knowing that the project was going to have a long trajectory and the opening wasn't going to be until October, I wanted people to have a sense of what they were getting involved in, and I wanted the project to be visible before the opening. So we created an online gallery, and I tried every night when photos would come in, I tried to keep it up to date. So, you know, your tree photo would get up within 24 hours. You could see what you had done, maybe what your neighbor had done, and then hopefully you would encourage other people to get involved. And we had one 5th grade class at Addison School participate. We went out to Earth Day at Walter Hayes School. Girls Middle School, Renee Fadden, our art teacher there, was a tremendous supporter. We had almost 100 girls from Girls Middle School participate, 6th through 8th grade, in the project. And so it really, I loved the idea that it was something that a family could do together or could engage with together.
What physically are we sitting in the middle of? What material?
Yeah, so you asked me about the process. So it started with the website, with the entries coming in, and then this summer was really figuring out, in my mind, I knew I was going to end up with these photographs. I didn't know how many. I hoped I'd get at least 100. We ended up getting 391. And then I wanted to do something to create an art installation that was unified from those images. So I toyed around with different ideas, different surfaces we could print the photographs on, different sort of ways you could walk through the piece, always taking the trees themselves and the content of the images as the starting point and trying to have it make sense from there. And a big turning point was when I started thinking about printing the photographs on glass and exploring what that might look like, and looking at possibly doing it myself and researching YouTube videos and discovering it's a very toxic, unreliable process. But I happened bad idea, change course. But in that process, I happened on a startup in Gainesville, Florida called Fracture that we ended up working with, and they had a concept for printing photos directly on glass, and we did tests with them and looked at their samples and started to get really excited about the possibility that the photo would have a transparent element to it. So when they print the photo on glass, basically the highlights or the white areas of the photos become, if it's totally white, it becomes transparent glass. And it, to the level that you can see light through a photo depends on how much light areas versus dark areas are in the images. But once we started thinking glass, and there were a few people brainstorming with me, but a big partner in the project was my brother-in-law, Jim Filo, who has helped me on my last 3 big installations. And we started to think, how can we build a structure that pulls the images off the wall? There's no point in having this stained glass kind of transparent effect and then putting it against the wall. Yeah. So we wanted it to be, I really wanted a 3-dimensional object that people could interact with. And I just kept thinking of a tree trunk, those huge trees that you can walk inside.
I feel like I'm in one. I feel like this is the bark of the tree, the outer layer, or a few of the outer layers.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of creating it, if I had said, let's put it together in a square, we could have probably been done 3 months ago, and we just finished, a few days ago. But the circle is such an organic shape, and I just feel very affirmed seeing it completed that was the way to go.
It's beautiful, and there are different shapes and sizes as well, but all seem to fit together. Well, you referenced your other projects, Connected, Bangalore and Silicon Valley is one of them, and then 1,737 trees.
Yeah.
The other one. Talk about those as projects related to landscapes in transition, and maybe how that might relate to this project.
Yeah, well, starting in 2000, as I mentioned, I have photographed the Silicon Valley landscape and really very interested in how landscapes change over time and how big trends, whether it was the dot-com boom and bust or other economic trends, affect a landscape. So in the project that's up at the San Jose airport right now, I've taken imagery from the Silicon Valley body of work, and then after many years of photographing here, I decided that going to Bangalore, India would be a fascinating place, because Bangalore was a place that had become very interlinked with our area because of jobs and commerce and outsourcing, and I became interested in seeing how the landscape there was being affected, as we were in some ways declining and they were increasing in some ways, but the relationship is more complex than that, of course. But you could see office buildings going up that looked like our boom times, and in many ways looked exactly like the same office buildings that we have here. So just very interesting contrasts and similarities evolved out of photographing there. And the project at the airport gave me a chance to put those images near each other, and I have large images on light boxes there as you enter the security area at Minette International Airport. And then the tree project I mentioned before, but the photographing in the orchard, I went down to this orchard right off of Cottle Road on Highway 85, based on a newspaper article I had read, and made a few photographs and thought, okay, I've now kind of covered the orchard part of Silicon Valley. But just something kept making me want to go back there, and I eventually spent 3 years there in the wintertime only photographing under gray skies because I wanted a certain sort of look and feel to the images, then photographing the trees sort of in a portrait fashion, and I used some students that I was working with to help me make a map of the orchard so we could make sure when we created the artwork, we put each tree back in its original place where it had been planted in the orchard. And that piece you can see at City Hall in San Jose. It's about 20 feet tall, and it's actually made up of magnets that sit onto a sort of a patinaed metal surface. So it's been great to have a way to kind of think about the work and put it together beyond the actual photograph itself. And so those two installations have, similar to this project, have given that opportunity.
So let's think for a minute about how those concepts relate to what's going on here. You've got 391 people capturing a tree and then telling a story about it. What's popped out for you? Does it seem like this is a community in a landscape in transition in any way from what you've seen? What is similar or not similar to what drew you into those other projects?
I mean, that's a really interesting question. I think within this area, Palo Alto is a very stable community in terms of having been around for a long time. Its trees are old houses, old neighborhoods. So I think there's a lot of tradition in the midst of an area with great innovation and churn and ideas flowing. Palo Alto is certainly part of that. So Palo Alto is really interesting. I mean, it holds both of those. When you meet people here, you meet people who've lived their whole lives here, but you meet many more people who are here because they're at Stanford for a while, or because they moved here for a job, or, it's just an area that draws so many fascinating people to it. So I don't know, I think Palo Alto is interesting in that way. It certainly has a lot of innovative change happening within it, but the trees, I think, are kind of a constant, and I think this is a bit of a different take on the landscape, and I think one of the many themes that emerged from what I saw in people's 6-word stories was people really do have a relationship with the trees around them. They would choose a tree often that was personal to them. When I said about this, people said, well, what are you going to do? Because everyone's going to photograph this tree, or everyone's going to photograph that tree that are recognizable. Sure, we have some of the great trees represented, but
they're the same tree twice in here?
There's only a couple of instances, and they're not trees that you would have expected it. They're still neighborhood trees.